time for us to check back in with the thread that runs so true. If you missed any of the previous readings, just look in the description below for a playlist. On a Saturday afternoon in July, I was lying on the parched yard grass under the shade of a bushy-topped poplar whose broad leaves were now wilted pods drooping in the sun. Pencil-sized shafts of light from the midsummer sun filtered between these clusters of wilted leaves to make shadows on the grass. I was observing light and shadow crisscross and intermingle on the brown parched grass. "Is this where Stuarts live?" "It is," I said, rising from the grass. "Could you tell me where I could find Jesse Stuart?" said the short, red-faced man with a blond mustache standing by our yard gate. Two larger men were walking up the path behind him. "You're talking to him," I answered. "I thought you were an older man," said the man at the gate. "This is the man we want to see," he said, turning to the others. "This is Stuart." "Come in," I invited him. "My name is Mooner Bentworth," he introduced himself. "I'm chairman of the Greenwood County Board of Education. This is William Dawson, and this is Tobias Claxton, members of the Greenwood County School Board." "I'm glad to meet you, gentlemen," I said, "but if you've come to see me about teaching school, I'm not available. I left the teaching profession last year. I've said that I would never teach again." "This is something bigger than teaching," Mooner Bentworth explained. "Let me tell you what we want. We need a new superintendent for Greenwood County Schools." "New superintendent for Greenwood County Schools," I repeated, for it was hard for me to believe. "What's happened to Larry Anderson?" "Lansboro City Schools have pulled out of the county system," Mooner explained. "Lansboro is an independent city school system like it used to be." We had a little misunderstanding. "The county and town had what I'd call a falling out, Mr. Stuart," William Dawson helped Mooner explain as he spat amber spittle on the grass. "It was never in the stars for us to get along with them, anyway. I told the boys that when we went in cahoots with them." "Lansboro has taken Larry Anderson from us," Mooner said. "He's the new superintendent of Lansboro City Schools." "So that's the story," I said. "Larry Anderson was a good man, and we hate to lose him," Tobias Claxton interrupted. "But Lansboro is paying him more money than we can pay him." "We need somebody to lead us," Mooner Bentworth said, "and we've talked to teachers of our county school system, and we've talked to citizens from different parts of the county. Everybody we've talked to tells us you're the right man. We can't find anybody against you." "I'm glad the people feel that way about me," I said. "This is good news, but I don't think I could qualify for county school superintendent." "You have a college degree, haven't you, Mr. Stuart?" William Dawson said, spitting again on the grass. "Yes, I have my degree," I said. "I have college hours to spare, but the Kentucky school laws have changed. One has to have 4 years of teaching experience before he can get a superintendent's certificate. I have only 3 unless they will accept my substitute and practice teaching in college." "Are you old enough?" Tobias Claxton asked. "I'm 24, I said. "That's the age limit," Tobias said. "You can't be any younger." "Can you qualify, get your certificate, and take over next month?" Mooner Bentworth asked me. "I don't know," I said. Superintendent of Greenwood County Schools raced through my mind. Not teaching, not a high school principal, but superintendent of Greenwood County Schools. This was hard for me to believe. I wondered if I were really lying under the poplar tree dreaming that the 3 members of the Greenwood County Board of Education had approached me. Here they stood before me. 2 were leaning on the yard fence, and Mooner Bentworth was standing with his hand on the gate post. They were awaiting my answer. Would I take it if I could qualify? "Gentlemen, will you hold the position for me until I see whether I can get a superintendent's certificate or not?" I said, because I couldn't turn down this offer. "If I'm able to qualify, I'll be your superintendent of the Greenwood County Schools." "How long will it take you to find out whether you can qualify or not?" Mooner Bentworth asked me. Not more than 2 weeks, I said. Maybe not that long. Can we wait that long, men? Mooner asked, turning to his fellow board members. Yes, we can wait, William Dawson said. This is the man we want. We want you to try for your certificate in a hurry, Tobias Claxton warned. We don't want to be without a superintendent. I'll start work this afternoon, I said. I'll let you know, soon as I can, what happens. That's good enough, Mooner Bentworth said. Say, where's your other 2 board members, I asked. It suddenly dawned on me only 3 board members had come to ask me to be superintendent of Greenwood County Rural Schools. Don't even ask about them, Mooner Bentworth answered quickly. 2 new men were elected in our race last year. Benton Dangerfield was elected from the west end of the county, and Manley Warburton was elected from the east end. They were elected against Larry Anderson. They're against everything we do. Mr. Stuart, we don't consider them, William Dawson said. We run the school board, Tobias Claxton interrupted. We have the majority. We hold together. We are your friends. We want you. Benton Dangerfield and Manley Warburton are against you because we are for you. You're not on the ground floor now, my boy, Dad beamed as he stood before me dressed in a tight-fitting blue serge suit, white shirt, bow tie, and derby hat. You're on the top floor. You've amounted to something. You've gone as high as you can ever go. That's why I'm taking this day off. Be honest in all things, Jesse, Mom advised me. You're going into the highest job in this county. The county school superintendent's office has been the graveyard for many a man's reputation. I'll pray for you. Then Dad and I started walking to Landsboro over the old familiar path. He walked in front to brush the dew from the ragweeds. Son, if you can be superintendent of this big county school system, I can brush the dew from ragweeds to protect your clothes. When we reached Landsboro and started walking down Main Street, Dad was surprised at the number of people who stopped us in the street and congratulated me. They congratulated Dad, too, for having a son that would be superintendent of Greenwood County Schools. For these people, many of them merchants, knew that my father couldn't read, couldn't write, and had such scanty knowledge of arithmetic that he had to depend on the merchants with whom he traded to do his figuring. He had to take their word for everything unless one of his children was with him. Sophia and I had to write his letters and do his figuring for him from the time we were 8 years old. Young man, I'm proud of you, Uncle Walt Weston said, shaking my hand. You've amounted to something. Uncle Walt Weston had operated a clothing store in Landsboro for 60 years. It was in his store that I had bought my clothes when I was a pupil in Landsboro High School. Often I would get clothes on credit, and he would wait until I got returns on a batch of animal pelts. He had always given me credit in his store for anything I wanted. My father had traded with him for 40 years. Alvin Terry, Mrs. Ann Walters, Mrs. Maud Farlington, Grace Binion, Lark Spruce, and others stopped us and congratulated me and talked to my father as we walked down the street. Dad and I had planned to be in the county superintendent's office an hour before the Greenwood County School Board met, but so many of our friends had stopped us, we arrived just in time for the meeting. I'm one of the school board members you don't know, said a big pink-cheeked man. I'm Benton Dangerfield. I did know Benton Dangerfield. He had killed 2 chicken thieves in his chicken roost, and his trial had been one of the most sensational trials in our county. He had come clear in his trial, but because Sherman Anderson, brother to Larry Anderson, who was prosecuting attorney, had prosecuted him, he thought unmercifully, he ran for a member of the Greenwood County Board of Education against Albert Hicks, who was Larry Anderson's board member, and defeated him. Benton Dangerfield was about 6'5" and weighed approximately 260 pounds. He had bright blue laughing eyes and a shock of blonde hair. He didn't look like a killer. He was the best looking, best dressed member on the school board. I've heard of you, wondered about you. You were a very young man, he said, looking me in the eye. I had planned not to vote for you because the other 3 members of this school board are for you. They are still too friendly with Larry Anderson. I'm against that man, young man, he continued while we stood in the courthouse corridor. You are going into a mess. You've got something ahead of you. I know you have. I'm willing to tackle it, I said. Then Mooner Bentworth called the meeting of the Greenwood County Board of Education, and we went inside. Benton Dangerfield introduced me to Manly Warburton, a small gray-eyed man wearing a gray suit, light blue shirt, and red necktie. I greeted the 3 members of the majority faction of the school board that had come to my home to ask me to accept the position. I greeted Larry Anderson, superintendent under whom I had served for 2 years. This was his last day in office. Tomorrow I would be in his place, and he would be where I had once been. The meeting was called to order. Mooner Bentworth presented to the Board of Education my application for the position of Greenwood County Superintendent. William Dawson made the motion that I be hired. Tobias Claxton seconded the motion. Immediately, the majority faction of the board voted for me. The surprise came when Benton Dangerfield voted for me. After Manly Warburton saw how Benton Dangerfield had cast his vote, he too voted for me. I got the unanimous vote of the board. Members of each faction looked at each other as if there was something they couldn't understand. I was ready to take my oath of office. Outside the office door, I gave my first newspaper interview. Monday, I would take over, and I called an extra meeting of my Greenwood County School Board for my first day in office. There was something I wanted to know. My first day in office, I was a busy man. I must have had 100 visitors. Each one wanted something. Many were school trustees who had axes to grind with other school trustees. While I was in Vanderbilt University, I did not know that a law had been passed to have 3 district school trustees instead of 1. Now each little rural school district in each county in the state of Kentucky had 3 district school trustees. Why the school teachers and the educators and thinking citizens had ever allowed this bill to pass was beyond me, for this gave each teacher of the little rural school 9 bosses, 3 trustees, 5 county school board members, and the county school superintendent. But the district school trustees had the power. Many of these trustees had come to see me on the first day I was in office. We now had 246 district school trustees in Greenwood County. I wanted to know something about the financial condition of the Greenwood County schools. The stories my school board members told me while we were in closed session about the financial plight of our school system was alarming. If I could rely on what they told me, we were in danger of financial collapse. They told me they hadn't been paid for months. They were waiting for the new tax revenues to be collected. I suggested to them that we should not accept opinions about this financial situation, but have a public accountant audit our books and give us the facts. When I made this suggestion, only Benton Dangerfield and Manly Warburton approved. Whatever they were for, the majority of my school board was against, and I had to keep the majority of my school board on my side. After I had talked with the board members, I knew that not one of them was a good businessman. Each man was a farmer. Not one of them owned and operated a large farm. Not one of them had handled very much money. Finally, I told them it was customary when a new man took over a public office for an accounting to be made so that the public would know in what condition the outgoing official had left the office to his successor. I told them the condition of the county school might be better than they thought. I hinted that there might be enough money to pay what was due them and that my wanting the books audited wasn't anything against the character of any man that had served in the office, that this was the right thing to do so we could build from the foundation stones of financial facts. Finally, they agreed. They made a motion, and it carried by unanimous vote to have an auditor audit our books and calculate our incoming revenue. 2 weeks later, the audit had been made. The Greenwood County school system was approximately $144,000 in debt. This included the bonded indebtedness of the new Maxwell High School in the west end of the county, but of this $144,000, we owed the Lansboro National Bank $54,000, and $26,000 of the amount we owed the Lansboro National Bank had been borrowed the preceding year by Tobias Claxton, Mooner Bentworth, William Dawson, and the 2 members of the board that Benton Dangerfield and Manley Warburton had defeated, with the promise to pay the bank from this year's local taxes when they were collected. There was even a deficit of $3,300 in our account at the bank. Our property taxes plus state appropriations were approximately $100,000. This was the highest figure at which the auditor could place our anticipated revenue for the year. I asked them what arrangements had been made for the rural pupils of the east end of Greenwood County, since Lansboro was no longer a joint county city high school. I was informed a temporary line had been drawn across the county. All county high school pupils west of this line would go to Maxwell High School. All the county high school pupils east of this line would go to Lansboro High School. I was told that we would have to pay $8 per month for each pupil. This tuition was exceedingly high, judging from the amount of revenue we had to spend. This temporary line was drawn with Cliff Creek, a small stream that flowed south from Big River, dividing the county in approximate 1/3 and 2/3 sections. According to this setup, which was made by the Greenwood County School Board before I became superintendent, the majority of our county high school pupils from the 2/3 section would be going to Lansboro High School, where we would have to pay tuition. Maxwell High School, our only county high school, would not have half as many pupils from the 1/3 section as we had space for and faculty to teach. I would like to suggest this arrangement be changed, I said. Instead of paying this tuition to Lansboro High School, I suggest we transport our pupils by bus from the east end to Maxwell High School. We can save money. We can give employment to another bus driver. We still have an extra school bus, and if we have to, I added, we can employ additional teachers at Maxwell High School to take care of these pupils and still save money. But teachers have already been hired to take care of them at Lansboro High School, Mooner Bentworth said, jumping to his feet. We can't tear up their plans. I would just like to ask Mr. Bentworth something, Benton Dangerfield said as he arose from his chair. Mooner, are you working for Lansboro City School System, or are you working for the Greenwood County School System? Then I presented facts and figures to the members of the board. I showed them what the cost would be at Lansboro High School if we paid tuition. I showed them the approximate cost at Maxwell High School. I make a motion we send our rural pupils from east end of Greenwood County to Maxwell High School, Manley Warburton said. I second that motion, Benton Dangerfield said. Did you gentlemen know, Mooner Bentworth said, that there is a Kentucky school law that says you must send pupils to the most convenient school? Did you know we cannot pass Lansboro High School with our school buses loaded with pupils for Maxwell High School? We can't transport our pupils from this end of Greenwood County lawfully past Lansboro High School. I'd like to test that law, Benton Dangerfield said. Laws are made for the people, not people created for laws. I know this will cause trouble, Mooner warned. We will have a lawsuit if we do it. Jesse Stuart has made the wrong suggestion. I don't agree with it. I think that you," he said, pointing his trembling index finger at me, "are a dangerous man." "Let this motion come to a vote," Benton Dangerfield said. "Let's see who is loyal to the county. We know it's a good suggestion. We know that this proposal is right. We know it's one of the best suggestions we have made here." William Dawson, Tobias Claxton, Benton Dangerfield, and Manly Warburton voted in favor of this motion. Then a strange thing happened. "I'm voting for it too," Mooner Bentworth said. "It's a measure I don't want to go on record as voting against." We'll stop right there. Jesse has once again got himself in a real mess, hasn't he? You'd think by now, kind of, maybe because he was young. I don't want to say, I mean, I'm not talking bad about young people, but maybe because he was just 24. Maybe he was still naive. But it seems like at every school he learned, and every position, even when he was principal, he learned that things are not often what they seem, you know, like he just assumed he would make good money, and he just assumed all these things. So it looks like at this point, like when those three men come up in the yard, I'd have said, "How much are you going to pay me?" And why, you know, he did ask where were the other two, and that was his first warning when they said, well, the other two didn't come because they were really against Larry Anderson, but they got in, and so now they're against us, and we vote, we're the majority, and they're the minority, and everything we vote for, they vote against. So that was Jesse's should have been his first little inclination that there was some trouble going on there. Don't you love the names, though? Mooner Bentworth, I love that. So he seems like he's the ramrod, but then he's the Benton Dangerfield is actually going up against him and seems to be handling him. Did I say the first one? Yeah, Mooner Bentworth. I was thinking, I get getting their names mixed up because one's Mooner Bentworth and the other is Benton Dangerfield. So it seems like Mooner Bentworth was the ramrod. He was the one in charge, kind of pushing it along. But then, so far, in this little part we've read, Benton Dangerfield's kind of getting him, you know, kind of swaying the rest of their judgment. And he warned Jesse too, right when they were about to go in. He said, you're about to go into a mess. I can just see him be like, "Oh boy, old son," that's what Pap would say, "Old son, you're about to go into a mess." So I do love, go back to the beginning, I love the description that Jesse had when he was laying under the tree. I don't know if you ever did this when you were a child. It's one of those things in adulthood you kind of forget to do, or you don't have time to do it or whatever, but just like he described, laying under the tree there and looking at the sunlight, like making the crisscross pattern through the leaves of the poplar tree. You know, you can sit and just watch dust go through the air, pollen or something. Those are things sometimes you find yourself doing when you're a child, and just kind of dreaming off in dreamland, and you don't have as much responsibility. I guess that's why you can still do it. But I love that little description that I could just picture Jesse laying under the tree, and then the men saying, "Is this the Stuart place?" And then they were looking for Jesse. So I really loved that. Again, it's really, really sweet and heartwarming that his mother and father are so proud of him. Really proud of him, and his daddy takes off work and dresses up nice because he wants to go see him be, sworn in or whatever, if you will. And then I love his mother saying she'd pray for him. Sounds like Jesse's gonna definitely need some prayers there. Even it's bad enough that his school board is divided, that they're gonna, three of them saying they're always gonna vote together, and those other two are always gonna vote against them. That's not good. You want everybody to be on the same page. But then he finds out they're in so much debt. And then within that, he says, like, out of that $54,000 from the bank, $26,000 of it was just borrowed. So he has to be wondering about that. Now maybe they borrowed it to try to cover those teachers' pay. That's probably it. Probably they had to go borrow it for that. But so now he's realizing he is in a real mess. And then you get down to kind of, he's just beginning to really try to figure out why. Well, then they've made this crazy deal with that school system that left, that they would actually send some of their students there. But then that school system said, well, you'd have to pay tuition. You have to pay for them to send them here. So then they agreed to that. And then Mooner, he gets so upset about it, it kind of makes you wonder if there's some kind of backroom deal going on where he was, because if they did pay tuition, that would really help out that school system. That would really help them out a lot. So maybe there was some kind of backroom deal where I'll get you some money from these students, but gosh, Jesse's in a mess. He's in a real mess. So they've all voted now to do, and even Mooner at the last minute, changed his mind because, of course, he didn't want to go out, have that be out. Well, Mooner voted for the people that left us instead of for us, instead of, our side. He didn't want that to get out and about. So even he voted for it. But now you wonder, is that law that Jesse said he wasn't aware of, because, of course, he was at college trying to learn things, is that going to play a role in this? Are they going to send those kids to their high school, but then end up having to send them back? I don't know. We'll have to find out. But that is crazy about the district lines. Why would they? You just think, why? Which one of you agreed to that? But again, was it because they were kind of beholden to Larry Anderson before he left? Because they didn't want him to leave, and they were friends with him, and they were friendly with him, and they got along with him. So then was that kind of a gift to him as he left to go be the superintendent of the Lanesboro City Schools? I don't know, really interesting. Definitely a peek into politics. Politics is like that on the local levels, and of course we all know on the national levels. But poor Jesse, I just think, why didn't you ask him, Jesse? Why didn't you ask some questions before you just jumped in with both feet? But so far, the times he's jumped in with both feet, it's been tough on him, but he has been able to actually do some good. So I'm sure he will here too. We'll just have to wait for next week to find that out. I hope you enjoyed this little part. It's kind of another turn of, we keep thinking he's getting out of teaching and education, and then turns back, and he's out and then it turns back. So another sharp turn back to the world of education for Jesse Stuart. Hope you'll leave a comment and let me know what jumped out at you about this part we read today, and I hope you'll drop back by next week. So we've got to find out what happens to Jesse now as superintendent and how he can wrangle those school board members into doing what he thinks is best.